Hello everyone, hope you all are doing great. A warm welcome to today's session on advanced React pattern. We are thrilled to have you join us for this practical and insightful masterclass. As web development evolves, mastering advanced React pattern is essential for building efficient, maintain apps. Whether you are just starting or looking to refine your skill, this session is for you with valuable insight you can apply immediately. Before we dive in, I am Preeti, your host for the session. It's now my absolute pleasure to introduce our speaker, Mr. Gaurav. Gaurav is a software consultant and web development mentor with over 12 years of industry experience. In 2020, he made a bold decision to leave his job and focus fully on freelancing and teaching. Over the years, Gaurav had taught thousands of students through bootcamps and one-on-one sessions, empowering many to excel in the world of web development. His experience span a wide range of web technologies with a deep expertise in React and advanced pattern. Gaurav has worked with clients across multiple industries, helping businesses build robust applications with scalable and efficient architectures. He has also mentored students and professionals, guiding them towards mastering complex web development concepts and landing their dream jobs. This session is all about hands-on learning and interaction. So stay engaged, take notes, and don't hesitate to ask questions. Without further ado, let's give a warm welcome to Mr. Gaurav. Over to you, Gaurav.
Thanks, Preeti, and thanks for the wonderful introduction. I'm happy to be here, and I'm looking forward to taking this masterclass. And hope you guys are. Hope it makes. Hope this session provides you wonderful value. So let's start with the session. So I'll just share my screen now. All right. I hope you guys can see my screen.
Yes, it's visible.
Okay. So we'll start from scratch actually. We'll begin by creating a React project first. So for that, we'll be using Vite. Okay. So here I have my VS Code and I'll just run this command bun create Vite. So I'm using bun as my runtime. Now there are other runtimes available such as npm, pnpm, yarn, and so on. So I have bun installed on my machine. So let's use that. Uh, so I just need to install the version of bun. Since I have multiple versions of bun running on my machine, I'm using this tool. You need not do this step, right? And let's use node version as well. So I'm using node version, let's see. One create read, let's check. It's asking me to use a node version as well. Okay, let me just check which versions of node I have. So no, if you're just wondering what is ASDF, it's
I'm so sorry, guys. Gaurav is facing some network issue. He will join us back within a minute. I'm so sorry, everyone. He will join us soon. Till then, if you guys have any question, you can write those question down in Q&A tab. We'll dedicate a proper Q&A session. Okay, so you can write down all your queries in Q&A tab.
All right. So there was a electricity my end. Sorry for that. So yeah, I was just checking the Node version installed on my machine. So I have 23.11 as the Node version. Let me just set that. Okay. And let's run the wheat setup now. So we'll just run bun create wheat. Okay. What is it saying? Okay. ASDF list node.js ASDF list bun. All right. ASDF set bun 1.2.10. Yeah. So bun create wheat. All right. So now we have the template which is provided by Wheat. So we'll just create a project called demo. Then we'll select React and we'll use JavaScript for now, right? So it's asking us to change the directory to demo, and then we'll run bun install over here. Okay. And then what we need to do is we just need to type this command bun dev. This will start the Wheat server, right? So it's available on localhost 5173. Let me copy this URL and I'll open this over here, right? So if everything is set up properly, then you should be able to see this page. And when you click on count, it should update this counter, right? So let's just go through the structure of this app over here. So this is our entry point right here, which is the app component. And inside this, let's go inside this. And here we just have uh, we have this use state, right? Count and set count. And here we have the logic and all this text which you're seeing over here, right? So let's create a simple counter component over here. Okay. So what we will do is for now, we'll just return h1. This is our app. All right. And let's create a new counter component. Okay. And what we will do is we will just have this logic const count set count, and we'll set the initial value to 0, and then this component is going to return some HTML, right? So we'll have a div over here. We'll add a button inside that, and we'll just show the value of count here. Okay. And over here, we'll render this counter. Okay. And we'll get rid of this. And yeah, we forgot to add this closing tag. That is why we are seeing that error. And we'll just say count over here. So whenever we are clicking on this, nothing is happening. So we need to wire this. My screen is visible, right?
Yes, it is visible.
Okay, I got a message in the chat that it's not visible. Okay.
Yeah, they can check your internet connection or rejoin, or I can share a live URL also, so they can uh, join session there.
All right. So what we want to do is basically when we click on this button, we want to increment the count, right? So we'll just add a function handle click over here. And what this function will do is basically just update the count value, and it will add one to it. And on the click of this button, right, we will call this function, and whenever we are clicking on this, you can see the value of count is getting incremented. Okay. So this is a very basic React application, and we are making use of the use state hook over here. But there are other hooks which you can use which allow you to manage the state. So one such hook is the use reducer hook. So we'll take a look at that right now, how you can manage your state using that. Okay. So the way that works is, so we'll say, instead of using this use state over here, right? You saw how we could do it with that. Now let's make use of the use reducer hook. So this hook basically accepts a reducer function which gets the previous state and the action. Okay. So let's define a reducer function over here. This is going to get a state and an action. Okay. And let's pass the reference of this reducer function over here. The second parameter is the initial value. So let's set the initial value to 0, how we had it for the use state hook, right? And then in return, this will give us the current state, and it will give us a dispatch function. Okay. So using this function, we can trigger certain actions which allow us to update the state of this variable, and we'll just see what's the difference between the two using use state and the use reducer hook over here. So what we will do is, let's add the logic over here. So one way is that here, instead of calling set count, now we'll call the dispatch function, and we'll just pass that we need to pass count plus 1. Okay. And here what we'll do is we'll just say return the action as it is. Okay, we are not doing anything to this. Okay, we'll just return the action as it is, and then let's see what happens. So initially the value of count is 0, right? Because we have passed 0 over here. If I pass 1 over here, you will see this value as 1. Okay, so the second argument is the initial value for this particular state. Now, when I click on this, it will call the handle click function, and then it will in turn call dispatch function. And to dispatch, we are passing count plus 1. Now, whenever dispatch is called, it will call our reducer function, and the value of action will be whatever is the result of this. Okay, whatever argument we are passing over here, that will become available to the action, right? So we are saying you make it count plus 1. So let me click on this now, and you can see the initial value of count was 0. We're doing 0 plus 1 1. This will get passed to the reducer, and we're just returning the action as it is. So this reducer function, right, this basically returns the uh, latest updated value of the state. Okay, so now count is actually pointing to whatever is the latest value returned by this. So right now it is count plus 1, that is 1, right? 0 plus 1, so that is being returned over here, and that is what our state has been updated to. So this is the most, simplistic example of how you can replace your use state with a use reducer hook. Now let's do one thing. Let's add another button over here. Okay, and we'll say we'll show a minus sign over here, and we'll use this to reduce the value of our counter. All right, and for this one, right, what we will do is we will call this the plus icon, and in between of these we'll add a label, and we'll display the count over here. All right, okay, and here on click of this, we'll pass handle click here, and what we will do is we'll use the arrow function syntax over here, and to this handle click we'll pass an argument, say decrement. Okay, and here also we'll do the same. We'll use the arrow function syntax and call the handle click and pass increment over here like this, and this will get the event, right? So we also need to pass the click event argument. We'll pass this event over here, as well as the argument which tells us what type of thing that we're trying to do over here, whether we're trying to increment it or whether we're trying to decrement it, right? So I'll just answer your questions in just a bit. Let me complete the example, and if there are still doubts, I'll go through those. All right. Okay. So here we'll get the type, and then what we will do over here is that we'll pass the type over here. Okay. And we'll also we'll just pass the type over here for now. And here what we can do is we can check if action dot type is equal to increment, we do state plus 1. Else, if action dot type is decrement, we do state minus 1. All right, and let's just save this. Import export, handle click. Okay, I forgot to add a curly braces over here. All right, so let's do a reload of the app. So the initial state is 0. Now I'm clicking on plus. Okay, so this handle click is getting called, and it's getting called with this value increment. Okay, so here we are getting this type, and this type is what we are sending to the dispatch function, which will in turn call our reducer. And state is the original state, right? So initially it was 0, and the action is what? The type of the action is increment. Okay, so here we're just doing state plus 1. And if I click on the minus button now, right, so it's calling this function, and basically it will call our reducer. This time the actions type will be decrement, and it will do state minus 1. Okay, so this is how you can make use of the use reducer hook to manipulate your state. Okay. So there's a question that, what is the difference between the use state hook and the use reducer hook? So basically, both of these allow us to manage the state, but the difference is that it can have, different kind of logic over here in a single place within your reducer. Okay. So, I mean, this is a very simple example, but consider a scenario where you have a lot of manipulations to the state, right? Maybe you're working with a to-do list. You want to update a to-do list. You want to add a new item to the to-do list. You want to delete an item. Okay. So multiple actions are there, right? Which lead to the updation of a state. So all of that logic you can keep in a single place. Okay. The other thing is, since this is a function, right, which is outside, you can move it to another file. So for example, let's move this to this file reducer.js. Okay. Let me um, go back to our app. Let me get rid of this, paste it over here, right? And let's just import. We also need to export this. So we'll just write export reducer, and then we'll import it over here, reducer from the reducer file. And you can see it is still working like before. But the advantage is that, suppose I have this similar kind of logic in another component, right? Where I need to do this, so I can make I can reuse that logic. Whereas if I do it in state, it might not happen that way, correct? So all of your logic related to the management of the state, it all goes in a single place, and you can have your logic over here. You can take a look at what was the existing state, and you can pass a lot of information over here in the action and take the appropriate, uh, you know, take the appropriate action and update the state accordingly, right? So that is one, advantage of using the use reducer. So it depends on the use case, right? What kind of situation you are in, what is the need of the hour, right? So based on the requirement or the functionality that you're working on, you can make use of the use reducer hook, which allows you to manipulate the state. Then another example, another hook that I would like to um, teach you guys right now is the use context hook. So suppose we have let me create another example over here. Okay. So suppose I have this user dot jsx file. Okay. And I am showing some default content over here. And then suppose I have another component over here called user details. Okay, and let me create a variable over here, const user, say first name John, last name Doe. All right, and let's do one thing, return user, and here we'll just say in the span tag, the user's full name is, so this accepts some properties. Okay, for example, first name, last name. All right, and here we'll just do this, that we'll add the first I'm using the template literal syntax over here. So we'll say first name, space, last name, like this. Okay, and basically over here we will make use of the uh, user details component, and we'll just pass it the user object. Okay, and let me just add this. Let's do an export over here, and we'll just export user from here, and we'll make use of this component over here. All right, so we'll just add a React fragment, move our counter component inside this, and we'll also add a we'll add the user component which we just defined. Okay, so it's showing us that the user's full name is John Doe. Let me go back to this, and suppose within the user details component I have another component. Okay, uh, say user address, for example, and this accepts a city and a state. And then here we will say return the user's addresses, city and state. Now the thing is that uh, let's add this component over here. Okay. And we'll say this makes use of the user's address, and we will also pass the we'll create an object over here called address, and this will have a city and state. So these are some default properties. All right. And now what is happening is, even though the you have to keep on passing this additional information here as well, right? So this in turn will also need this information, so we need to pass it here. Then we'll get the address as a prop as well, and then what we will do is we will just spread through the address. Okay, and then it's showing us that the user's full name is John, the user's address is New York and Y. So you can see that what is happening is, as we are adding more and more components, we need to pass the information deep down even into those components as well as through the props. So this is okay for when you have less number of components, but if there's a deep hierarchy in the tree, right? If there are large number of components, so in that scenario, what will happen is that we have to keep on passing the properties from one component to the next component and so on. So this problem is known as prop drilling, that you're passing from the top level or the parent component to the child component to its child and so on. To handle such kind of scenarios, right? There's a special hook that we can make use of, which is known as the use, which is known as the we can make use of the context, and we can make use of the use context hook in such scenarios. So let's take a look of how we can make use of that hook over here. So in order to create a context, right? And suppose your logged in users information is available somewhere in your header. Okay, you have this login page, you have logged in, and then that information is stored somewhere. So what we will do is we'll create a context over here. So we can say function, not function, actually, we'll say const user context is equal to create context. So create context is a function which is provided by the React library, right? And you can pass it a default value. For now, we'll pass it as null. Okay. And then we need to provide this value somehow to all of its ancestors. So let's create a provider component over here. So function user provider. All right. So what this will do is basically this is going to return a this is going to return us the provider. So the way we make use of this is that we this user context that we have over here, we will say user context dot provider. Okay. And then the value that we want to share across all the components. So there's a special property of this provider which is known as the value. So what we can do is that we'll take this user from here, right? And we'll add this over here. And the value is, in our case, the user, right? And then we will close this provider. Then we'll make use of the children property, all right? And we'll render whatever is there, whatever is passed as children to this provider, we'll render that over here, all right? Then what we can do is we can wrap all of our other components, okay, within this user provider. Like this, okay? And then in order to read the value that we have stored in this context, all right, what we can do is that we can come over here. Suppose we want the user's address, right? So we can get rid of this from here. And what we can do is we can say const address is equal to use context, and we'll pass it the user context. Okay, the user context that we have created over here. All right. And then we're using this user context value is this right now over here, right? So it is this user object which has all of these properties, and we're using object destructuring to just get the address. Okay, let me save this over here. And let's come back to our app. So we have the user. Let me just check if there is any error. So it's saying user is not defined user.jsx. Okay, wait. Let's go back to our component. And since we removed this user from here, this is throwing an error. And similarly, for the user details as well, right? We need not need, we do not require these properties anymore. So what we will do is we'll just say const first name and last name. We'll get it from the context. All right. So let's save this over here. Store reload. Let's see if we're still getting any errors. So it's saying address is not defined, line number 16. Okay, right. So we have gotten rid of those props that we are passing to our components, right? And it's saying city is not defined. Let's just see address. Right. So here what we can do is we can destructure this further like this. And we have the city and we have the state. Okay. So you can see once again we are able to get this information, but this time instead of passing it down through the props, we are able to access it directly with the help of this context. Okay. And the advantage is that in the future, suppose we're adding any other component over here. Okay. So suppose I have another component, say function, say user contact. All right. So we can add this contact information over here to our original uh, user object. So we'll say contact, and then we'll say, for example, telephone or mobile, for example. And we'll add some number over here, some dummy numbers. Wait, like this. And so we'll say in order to display the mobile information, we can access the information from the context directly. And what we can do is we can just return that over here, and we can directly access. We'll add the user contact component within our provider. So you can see that it is showing us this, that the user's full name is John Doe, address is New York, and the mobile number is this, right? So as long as your component is available within this provider, right, you will be able to access the context value. Suppose I'd move this outside the provider, okay? So I place it over here. Let me wrap this within a React fragment so that this error is gone, like this. So now we're getting this error. Okay, it's telling us that it's not able to destructure the property contact of because the value of use context is null. That means this component, this user contact, since it is no longer inside this user provider, right? It's not able to access the context value which was provided through the user provider component. Okay. So all the things that were inside, all the components which are inside the provider, those are the only components which will be able to access the context value. So you have to ensure that whenever you're trying to make use of this context hook, you have to ensure that the component is present within the context provider. All right. So let me move this back inside the provider. So all the children of these, all the child elements which are inside this provider, they will be able to access the context. So the error has gone, and once again, you're able to see the mobile number, right? So now what we will do is we'll create a simple to-do app, and we'll use the knowledge of what we have learned right now, which is the use context hook and the use reducer hook, and we'll combine both of these to create a global uh, state management using the context API. All right. So what we will do is let's create a component over here, call it as to-dos.jsx. All right. So let's create a function over here to do. Let me rename this. Let's just call it as to do. All right. And what we will do is let's create another component over here. Function add to do. Okay. And what this is going to do will basically accept a input type over here, which is text, and we'll add a button over here, and we'll say add, and let's return this JSX. Let's create a section over here and move both of these inside this like this. Okay. And here we will say return. We will return the add to do component here. All right. And we'll create another component to do list, which gets a list of all the to dos. Okay. So for now, let me just create some dummy to dos. So const to dos is equal to, we'll create an array over here. So we'll give this an ID. Okay. So these are the values inside the to dos. We have these properties ID, title, and there's a status whether which is indicating whether the to do has been completed or not. Okay. So let's save this, and we'll pass this to the to dos over here like this. To do list like this, and now let's define the structure returned by this to do list. So we'll use the unordered list tag, and we'll go through the to dos that we have, and we'll keep a checkbox over here. We'll use a label, and yeah, let's save this. And then what we will do is let's add some routing within our app. So I'm going to open the terminal window, and we'll say bun add Wouter. So Wouter is another routing library similar to React Router DOM. Since we are going to use a basic functionality, we are making use of this library, right? It is pretty simple and easy to use. Okay. So let me just open the Wouter documentation. All right. So what we will do is we will say import. Yeah, we'll import switch, comma, uh, route, and link from Wouter. Okay. And what we will do is basically, actually, let's add the routing logic within our app. Let's take this from here, go inside our app. Okay. Let's add those imports over here. And here we will add a switch. So this is the example that they have given over here, that we need to wrap all of our routes within the switch. So let's create a default route. We'll say when the path is slash, okay? In that case, we will display the uh, counter component, okay? When it is user, we'll display the user component, and when it is to do, we will display the to do component. All right, let me get rid of this, and we'll also add these links over here. Okay, so that we'll be able to navigate. To do is not defined app. Okay, so we need to import the to do component. Okay, wait, did we export the to do component? Let's do that over here, export to do. And let's go back to our app. Let's try to import this again. All right. So we have all of our three links over here. So when the URL is slash, right, you can see the counter component. When we click on user link, we are able to see this user component. And when we click on to do, we are able to see all these to dos. Okay. So I've created three separate routes for each of these. Now let's go back to our to do component. All right. So what we want to do over here is that mm, we want to get all of these to dos from, we want to manage the handling of our to dos from the uh, context. I mean, we want to get the list of all the to dos from our context, and we want to handle all the logic using a reducer, adding a to do, removing a to do, and so on, updating a to do. So for that, what we will do is we'll create a new file over here. Let's call it as to do's context. Okay, dot JSX. So create a function over here, to do's reducer. Okay, this is also going to accept a state and an action, and we'll add the logic to manage our to do's over here. Then the next thing that we want to do is we want to get the list of all the to do's, right? So let's create a provider over here, to do's provider. And what we will do is in this provider, this is where we'll be storing all of our to do's using the use reducer hook. Okay. So to do's and then dispatch, and we are passing it the to do's reducer, and then we are giving it some initial value over here. Then what we want to do is we want to provide the values using a context, right? So let's create a context over here, const to do's context. So we'll create the context using the create context function. Okay. And here we will say, you will say return to do's context dot provider, and the value is going to be to do's and dispatch. Okay. And whatever comes in between of this, we are going to render it as it is. Right. And then let's create another hook called use to do's. And what we will do is we'll read the context from here using the use context hook. And in case the context is not available, it is going to throw us an error that you must use the use to do's hook using within the to do's provider, right? And this will throw an error, otherwise, it will just return the context. And what we will do is we will just export the to do's provider and use to do's from this file. Okay. Now here what we will do is within our to do.jsx, instead of reading the to do's as a prop, we can say const to do's is equal to use to do's like this. Okay. And then we'll remove this from here, and just for the purpose of testing, let's provide what we copied as the initial. Let me just undo this, paste it over here. So the initial values for our provider is going to be these to do's. Okay. So this is going to be the initial state for the to do's. Let's save this. Let's come back to our app over here. Let's save this. Let me do a reload. To do's context, create context is not defined. Okay. So let's go back over here. Probably forgot to import this. So we'll import this. Create context from here. And this is going to, for now, we'll just say we'll just return the state as it is. Let me do a refresh. Use context is not defined. So let me just import that as well. Use context. And yeah, it says it must be used within the to-dos provider. So what we have done over here is that we are making use of this use to-dos over here. But this to-dos list is not wrapped inside the to-dos provider, right? So what we will do is we will pass the to-dos provider over here, and wrap both of these components inside the to-do provider. Let's do a reload. So it's saying it's not defined. Let's import this. Where is it? To-dos provider. Use reduce. Okay, fine. We also need to import the use reducer. Sorry, we need to go to to-dos context and import this from React. So use reducer. Yeah. Let's go to the context file. Okay. So what we can do is let's call this as value and pass this over here, because both of the variables were having the same name. There was a conflict, right? And now it's not able to render those items. Let's see what's the issue. Let's come back over here, use to do's. All right. So use to do's basically now it's giving us the same value that our use reducer was returning, right? So this basically returns an array. The array has I mean, there are two items present in the array. The value at item index, sorry, the value is at the 0th index and the dispatch function is at the first index, right? So in order to access the values, we'll just use destructuring like this. And if we save this now, you can see we are able to see all the to dos now, right? The If we want to make use of the dispatch function, right, we will be able to access the dispatch function like this. All right. So this hook gives us access to our use reducer hook, the values returned by our use reducer hook, which is nothing but this, right? So now we're making use of this hook to access the to dos, and we also have a way to manipulate the update the to dos over here, right? So over here we just want to read all the to dos, right? In the to do list, we are not doing any modification logic over here, so we'll just use this over here, right? And then within our add to do, correct, we are only interested in the dispatch function, so we leave the first index as empty, and then over here we are just able to access the dispatch function. All right. Now what we want to do is whenever you're clicking on this button, we'll create a function over here, handle click, and we will say dispatch. We'll create an action over here. We'll pass the type as add, and we'll add a payload property. So payload is nothing but a convention which is followed generally. So our payload is going to be basically the text that we have over here from this input. So let's create a state over here, const title, set title, and the value for this is going to be title, and on change, right? Sorry, on change, we'll just call set title over here like this. And then whenever we're clicking on add, right, it should add this to do to our to do list. So here we'll say handle click, and basically what we want to do is we'll give a title over here and we'll just dispatch that. And since we're making use of the use state hook, we need to import it like this. All right. Now I am writing, say, to do. Okay, on change. So this needs to be event. And then here we will just call set title, and we want to get the value of our input, right? So let me clear this. So if I'm saying A, B, C over here, okay, let me click on add. Nothing is happening because we have not written the logic to handle our add functionality. So we'll go to our to do's context. We'll come inside our reducer. Okay. We'll destructure our action. We'll get the type and the action. Okay. Sorry. We'll get the type and the payload from the action. And let's write a switch case over here. So we'll check the type, right? If the case is add, what we want to do is we want to return whatever was the existing state, right? And the ID, we'll just say whatever is the length, we'll add one to it. The title we're getting from the payload, correct? And completed, we are setting it to false. Okay. So that is what we are doing over here. So let's save this. Now let's do this part over here, that let's add a to do 4 and let's click on add. So you can see that the fourth to do has been added to our list. And since it's not been completed, this checkbox is being shown, it's not ticked. Let's make a slight change. Let's make this as true, for example. Okay. And let's go to our to dos. And here we need to take a look at the checked property, and we will say to do dot completed. Okay, we need to bind this completed property over here. Let's do a reload. So you can see over here, this first to do is now appearing as checked because we have set its completed property to true. Now let's set this back to false again. Okay. And all right. So this is how we can do that part. If we do a reload now, that change is gone. Okay. Uh, so we are able to add our to dos. The next thing that we want to do is we want the ability to remove a to do, right? So let's add a button over here. Besides to do, let's go to the to do component. And let's add a button called delete. Okay. So when we click on this, function handle delete, and so we are going to call the handle delete function and pass it our to do dot id. Okay. So we are interested in the id that we want to delete over here, right? And in the payload, we'll just send the id over here and we'll add the logic to handle the delete. So we'll go to our to do's context. And we'll add a new case over here called delete, right? And basically, we'll go through all the to dos and find the particular ID and we'll just filter it out. Okay. The ID that we're getting from the payload. And it will give us the list of all the to dos which do not have the ID that we have just passed over here. Okay. Let's save this. So now when I click on delete, Let's take a look at the developer tools. It's saying dispatch is not defined. So let's go back to our to-dos, and so we need the dispatch function, right? So here we'll get the dispatch function from our use to-dos hook. All right. Let's do a reload. And now when I click on delete, you can see this particular to-do is getting deleted. All right. Let's add a new to-do over here. To-do 3. Right. So it is able to add this and delete this. And suppose I want to update this one, right? So let's add a edit button over here. And we'll add the option to edit. Let's reload. So we have these two buttons, delete and edit. And we'll create a function over here, function handle edit. So whenever the whenever you click on edit button, right, we basically want to show a input box using which we are able to edit the text, or rather for now we'll just make use of uh, the prompt functionality which is available in the browser. Okay, so what we will do is const new title is equal to prompt enter new title. So this will open a dialog and we'll just enter the title over in that prompt and get the updated value. And then we'll just call dispatch. Uh, and this time the type of the action is edit. And in the payload, we'll pass the ID and the uh, new title. All right. So let's save this and let's come over here. We'll say on click handle edit, and we will pass it the ID of the to do that we want to edit, right? Let's save this. All right, let's click on edit now. So you can see it has entered this prompt, and suppose I want to update this to new task 3, and then when we click on OK, this is available over here inside this new title, and then we will call the dispatch. Now we need to add this edit case within our reducer. So we'll go to the to-dos context, right? And here we will add a case. We'll say edit. Okay. And let's see the logic that we're getting by default. So it's going through all the properties that we have, and then it's looking for the matching ID, and we're spreading through all the properties. All right, and basically it's just returning the updated to do. Okay, so we're making use of the map function over here to go through all the to dos. If we find the to do with the ID that we are passing in the payload, right? If that matches, we are spreading through all the properties of the to do, and we're just updating the title property. If it doesn't match, we're just returning that to do as it is. Okay, so let's save this. All right, now let's click on edit. Let's say updated to do over here, and I click on OK. You can see it has updated the title for this particular to do, right? So the edit functionality is working, the delete functionality is working, and so is the add functionality. And the benefit of this is that now we've created a global context, right? So suppose what I want is this information of to dos is available throughout my app. I want it to be available throughout my application. So what I can do is I can go to the app.jsx over here, right? And I can import the to-dos provider from the context and wrap it and wrap all of my routes inside of that, right? So what I will do is I'll say to-dos provider, and here also I want let me close the to-dos provider over here like this. Okay, I need to say slash over here. All right. Now what I can do is suppose I go to my user route, okay, and I want to see how many to-dos are there over here in total. So we'll go to our app.jsx and we'll go to user.jsx, and here what we'll do is suppose I want to see the total count of to-dos which are there. What I can do is we can just say const to-dos is equal to use to-dos, right? And then let's add a total to-dos. We can just do to-dos dot length over here like this. So it is showing us this information over here, right? Let's move this inside a strong tag. Okay. And another thing that I'll do is let me take this inside a article tag. Okay. And let's create some styling over here. Say class user, and let's go to index.css. We'll add a new CSS class over here. We'll say display flex, uh, and flex direction. We'll say column, and we'll use the gap property. We'll use a gap of 16 pixels. So you can see over here total to dos is 3, right? So even though we're on a completely different page, right? Just because this page is the to dos context is available to this page, we are able to modify, I mean, we're able to see the number of to dos over here also. So that is the advantage of using the context hook. And suppose from here, right, I want to, um, even from this page, suppose I want to add a new to do, or make some changes to the to do's, I can do that very easily from this page also, right? So suppose I just want to add a new to do over here, right? What I can do is basically add the, we'll go to the to do's page, right? And let's export this as well. And then we can come to our user and we can say add to do over here, right? We can add this component and let's say new to do added. And when I click on add, right, you can see that it automatically updated the account. And now if I go to the to do page, it should have shown, wait, let's go back to the user, updated to do, add to do. Okay, let's just check why is it not being shown over here. Let's go to todo.jsx and let's just log this to the console. All right. Let's open the developer tools. Let's go to the user page, new to do. Let's click on add. Let's go to the to do's page. So it's still not showing the updated. Let's go to the user page. And here the count is being shown as 5. Add to do. Actually, we are creating a new provider over here. Actually, that is why that issue is happening. Let me add this inside a fragment. All right. Let's go back to the to-dos over here. And now you can see the updated to-do and the new to-do. So the reason why it was behaving like that was because now at this level, right, we had added a to-dos provider and then we forgot to remove this to-dos provider from here, right? So there were now two different providers available within the app. So when we were adding it on the users page, it was only getting added to the top level provider. And then since there was another provider over here, right, the default value was returned by it. So the default values were the three to dos that we had. So all the modification which was happening, that was just happening to that. And this was a completely new context that we had over here, right? When it was like this was creating a new context. So since these were wrapped inside this, right, it was only able to access the the to-dos which were provided by this provider, right? So there were two set of providers, even though they were same. One which was getting updated from this user's page, and then the other one which was available for just this page, right? So this was not getting updated, right? Because this is a different instance of the same thing, so it had those values, right? So when we got rid of this from here, right, this started to work correctly. So you can see over here, the benefit is that, I'm able to add a to do, the account is getting updated, and the updated to do is getting reflected over here. So this is how, without using any library such as Redux or Jotai or any of those libraries, you can implement your own uh, reducers without Redux, right? So for simple small apps, you can make use of the context hook and the use reducer hook to achieve this. All right. So these are like two of the hooks which you can use uh, to advance things. These are some of the advanced patterns that you can use. Let's quickly take a look at some of the things that you can do to enhance the performance of your application. All right. So we'll go to um, our what do you say? Let's go to our counter page over here. All right. And what we will do is actually, let's come back over here. Yeah. So this is our counter over here. So let's move this into a separate file, counter.jsx, and we'll export the counter from here. All right. And let's create a new page called home.jsx. Okay. Function home. Welcome to the home page. Export default home. And we'll go back to our app. Instead of showing the counter, we'll show the home page now. Okay, so you can see that this is the home page. Let's update this here. All right. Let me add a class nav over here. We'll go to our index.css, nav, display flex, and a gap of 16 pixels. So there's some spacing between all the links now. And what we want to do is let's create, let's take a look at some of the issues that affect the performance of an app, right? So what we will do over here is that we will basically let's create a, yeah, let's create a simple counter right over here within our home component. So we'll just say const count set count, and we'll make use of the use state hook. Let's add this as a dependency, and we'll create a counter component right over here. And this is going to accept the count value, and we'll just display this count value over here within the h1 tag. Okay, so it is accepting the value of count as a prop, and we'll just display this over here. All right. And what we are going to do is we will just say counter. We'll display this counter over here. Okay, let's save this. So you can see this 0 over here. Then we'll do one more thing. Let's create a checkbox component. And this is going to have this property called checked. Okay. Let's say label checked, and then on change. These are the props which this component accepts. And we will just say return. This is going to have a label. The input type is checkbox, and whatever is the value of checked, that will get assigned to this. And whenever the on change, whenever we were changing the value of the checkbox, this will call the on change function. All right. And over here, what we will do is we'll say checked and then set checked. And the next thing that we want to do is we will wrap all of this in a fragment. And here we will have the checkbox. Like this. And what we will do is we will just move this logic into a separate function. Function handle checkbox change. Okay. So let's pass this over here. This will get the event object, and we will say set checked event dot target. Right. And let's add a button over here to increment the value of this count variable. Okay. So on click, then we'll say set count. Whatever was the previous value, we'll add 1 to that. And we'll say add count. All right, and let's take a look at how all of these components are rendered. So for that purpose, we'll add a log statement over here, console.log, and we'll say %c. We'll say home rendered, and we'll add a color to this so that we can see in the logs how that the home component has been rendered. Similarly, let's add this for the checkbox and the counter as well. So we'll say counter rendered and checkbox rendered. Okay. And let's change the color over here to say green, and we'll change this to uh, royal blue, for example. Okay, let's use a different color, say orange for this. All right. So you can see in the logs over here that, when this component is getting rendered, it is being shown in the logs, right? So first of all, the home components log is there, then the counter components log is there, and the checkbox components log is there. So one thing we need to understand over here is that what happens when React comes across a component. So when it comes across a component, it will first create an instance of that component. It will go uh, and we'll take a look at the definition of this component, right? It will see what is being returned by this component. It will mount this component. If there are any updates or changes to the state, it will then try to re-render this component, right? So what we want to do over here is let's see what happens when we are clicking on add count. So when we are clicking on add count, basically what is happening is that this is triggering a update to our state, which is set count. Then what React will do is it will see, okay, where is this variable being used, right? So it is being used inside this home component. That means it needs to re-render that. So when it comes over here, it will re-render this counter component, and that is why you can see, you're seeing this log statement over here again, right? So home is being re-rendered, counter is being re-rendered, and the checkbox is being re-rendered. But the thing is that we have just updated the value of count, right? So why is it that the checkbox component is also getting re-rendered? Okay, so this is a performance issue, right? Over here, there isn't much, right? There isn't much logic that we have written inside our components. But for example, there is some component which has a lot of logic inside it. It takes a lot of time for that component to render. So if we make any changes to our add count, right, it is only this, I mean, it is only the counter component which should be re-rendered, right? Not the, uh, the checkbox component, but it is still getting re-rendered. So in order to tackle these kind of scenarios, uh, we can make some performance optimizations to our component. What we can do is we can wrap this checkbox component within our within a special function which is provided by React, which allows us to which allows us to which basically prevents React from re-rendering that component, right? So similarly, in this case also, when we are clicking on check me, right, you can see that there's no change to the count over here. We're just updating, whether the checkbox is checked or unchecked, right? Still, you can see, this home component is being re-rendered, the counter component is being re-rendered, and the checkbox is being re-rendered. Whereas, just the checkbox should have been re-rendered, right? Because this is where the change is happening. So, in order to do this, what we'll do is first we'll create a variable called counter, okay, and we will import a function called memo, which is available in the React library, and then we will just say, memoize this component, right? And we will wrap this component's definition inside this memo function. Okay, let's save this. All right, let me clear all the logs. Let's do a refresh. Now you can see that, this is the initial rendering of all the components. The home component is rendered, the counter component is rendered, and the checkbox component is rendered. Now you're seeing two of these log statements being fired. That is because we're in development mode. And in development, React fires all of your hooks twice, right? So it will call your components twice and it will do all of these things twice just to ensure that your functions are pure. So just for the purpose of demo, I'll just get rid of this strict mode so that React does not re-render all of these components twice. So now you can see that all of these components are only being rendered once. Okay, let me add the count. So you can see that the home component was re-rendered, the counters was re-rendered, and the checkbox was also re-rendered. Let's see what happens when we click on check me, because what we have done over here is that we have basically wrapped this counter component in this memo function, right? So when we are updating the value of this checkbox, the count is not getting updated, right? So let's see what happens now since we have wrapped this counter component inside this memo function. Let's click on check me, and now you see only the home component is being re-rendered and the checkbox is being re-rendered, right? And the count is not being re-rendered. So this is happening because we have wrapped this inside this memo function, and the prop accepted by this counter component is this count, and there's no change to this state, right? It was 1, and so when React is re-rendering this, okay, it's comparing which values have updated, it's checking in the virtual DOM what is the difference between the previous component that was rendered and the new one. So there's no change in the value of count, right? So it's skipping the re-rendering of this counter component, okay? And it's only rendering the home component and the checkbox component, because in checkbox the state of the checked is being updated. Now let's add this memoization to our checkbox as well. So we'll take this in a variable const checkbox is equal to memo, right? And let's wrap this function component definition inside this. Let's save this, right? Now let me click on add count. But if you notice over here, it's still saying that the home was rendered, the counter was re-rendered, and the checkbox was re-rendered as well. Now, why is this happening? Any ideas? You can let me know in the chat. Any guesses? So, what has happened over here is that we're passing this on change function as a property to this checkbox component, right? And what happens is when we are updating the count, this component is getting re-rendered. That means its function, this component's code is going to get called again, right? And since it's going to, get called again in between, re-renders, this function, this will be created again. So it will be treated as a new function, right? This will be treated as a new function. Now, when React is comparing the differences between the old checkbox which we have available on the screen versus the update which has happened, since this home component is getting re-rendered, this function is getting recreated, it will see that this prop has changed, right? The value of this on change function, it has changed. So to handle this scenario, there is another hook which is available, which is known as the use callback hook. Okay. So we will import the use callback hook. So what this hook allows us to do is that it allows us to cache this function in between re-renders. Okay. So we'll say const handle. Let me just copy this. Okay, take this in a variable, and here we will say use callback, and we will pass this function as the first parameter, and then it also accepts a second parameter, which is when you should update the when you should update the caching of this function, right? So for now, we'll just pass it an empty dependency array. Let's save this and let me just click on add count now, right? So let me clear all of these. Add count. So when we're adding the count now, right? You can see it's just re-rendering the home component and the counter component because this is essentially where the changes have happened. It's no longer updating the checkbox component. Okay. It is able to do so because now we have made use of the use callback hook, which is basically returning the original instance of this function, and it has seen that no change has happened to this, only the counter has been updated, right? So that is when it needs to return, so it will return the cached version of this. Then when react is comparing the difference between the component that was rendered earlier and the new one, it will see that there are no changes to any of its props, right? So it will skip re-rendering of this checkbox component. So that is why now you see over here that only the home component and the counter component have been re-rendered. Okay. So this is one way by which you can optimize your React apps. You can prevent frequent, you can prevent unnecessary re-rendering of your components with the help of these two hooks. So let me update the dependency of this. So this function should return a new instance, right? Only when the value of checked is changed. Okay. So now when we're saying that, let me clear all the logs. When we're updating the checkbox, right? Now the checkbox is being re-rendered, right? At this point of time, it's not caching uh, the function definition for this checkbox. So there's a change in the props. So in this case, React will re-render the checkbox component. So I hope this optimization technique is clear to you. You can add this optimization in your apps where you have this logic, where you can basically go through your app and you can you know find components which have this kind of scenarios. You can go through your components and identify, where this might be possible and memorize them, right? There are certain tools available which help you to identify this. One such tool is React Scan. So we'll just take a look at that. So it's available as a NPM package also. Okay, so we will basically add this. So right now we were using, console.log statements to figure out how many times a component was re-rendered and so on, and which component actually needed memoization, right? So with the help of this tool, it will automatically highlight all the components which are getting, re-rendered unnecessarily. Okay. So let me open the tools over here and we'll say bun add react scan. Okay, so it's added this package, and what we will do is we'll go to our main and we will say import scan from, not scan.js, from the react scan package. Okay, and then what we can do is let's go to the home page. And let's go to the wheat example. So you can see we're importing this and we just need to call this scan variable, and we'll just pass this property enabled, and we'll set this to true, right? Let's save this and let's go to our wheat application. And now you can see that this toolbar is available within our screen. And when we're clicking on add count, it is highlighting all the components which are getting re-rendered, right? Let's click on this. Let's go to the notifications. And just for the time being, let me get rid of the memoization logic from here, right? Let me just get rid of this memo functions here and here. Let's save this. Let's do a reload. And let's clear all these logs. Now, when I'm clicking on add count, and you can see that we have removed memoization, it's highlighting all the components which have been re-rendered. Let me click on this, and it's telling that you can memoize the checkbox to over here, right? It's basically, so basically it's telling us that the home component was rendered, the counter was component was rendered, and the checkbox was rendered, right? And it's telling us that you can fix the re-rendering of this component by adding memoization. Okay, so let me add memoization again, just to the checkbox, not for the counter. Okay, and now when I'm clicking on add count, you can see over here, this is the latest one. The home component and the counter components were rendered, and this is fine, right? So with the help of a tool such as React Scan, you can go to any of the pages in your app, and it's telling that this add to do, it is memoizable. You can memoize it. All right. So when we go to the user page, right, what we can do is basically we can basically go to the definition of this component, and we can say export const add to do is equal to memoize. Sorry, we can make use of the memo function and just pass it over here, and we'll add the memo dependency here. Save this. Let's save this. Let's do a reload. Okay, let's go to the notifications, and you can see that when we reload this, right, that notification is not there. Let's go back to the home page. Let's go back to the users page. Add count. So this is the logs for the home. And then when we go back to the user page, right, which is this. So let me do a reloading of this. Let's go to users. And then it's saying that, all of these components can be memoized. So we have actually memoized this add to do over here. So, but it's not working properly because you can see over here, it has this handle click over here, right? So once again, we need to add this inside a use callback. So const handle click is equal to use callback. Okay. And it should only change when the title is being updated. Okay. So in the dependency area of a use callback, we will pass title as a prop only when the title is getting updated, right? That's the only scenario where you need to discard the function definition. Okay. So let's import this as well. And now let's try to go back to the home, come back to the user. Let me clear this. Let's do a reload. And we have this total to dos over here. It's giving us some error over here. Let me try and fix that first. Okay, some character was typed accidentally over there. Let's save this. Let's go to the home page. Let's come back to the user page. And you can see that it's still asking us to memorize this. Let's see what else is there. There's this handle click. Let me just comment this out for now. Let's do a reload. Let's go to the to-do page, then the user page. So as you can see, it's a bit tricky to, memorize your components, right? Uh, Let me just add a log statement over here. Dated. And then let's click on add. Let me try something out. Use to-dos. Okay. Let's just comment out this functionality for a bit. Let's clear this. Let's do a reload. Let's take a look. Let's go to to dos, home, and then come back to this. All right. Let's come to home, back to the user component. I'm not sure why it's still showing it for memorization, but I mean, this is like one of the tools that you can use to take care of, to identify components which need memorization. Uh, but yeah, I just wanted to show to you guys like how you can make use of this tool and how memorization can be done and what's the use of the hooks such as use callback and how you can make use of the memo function in React to memorize your application and prevent re-rendering of a component. uh, the next optimization technique that I want to cover is that you can, lazy load your components, right? So let's see how we can do that. So here, what we can do is in our home page, okay, we have rather in our app, we have all of these routes over here, right? So when we are in the home page, we need not necessarily show, get the code related to the user and the to do page. So what we can do is we can lazily load our routes with the help of the lazy function, which is provided by React. So React dot dev, and we'll just search for the lazy function, right? So what this allows us to do is it lets you defer the loading of the components code until it is actually needed for the first time. Okay. So let's take a look at this example of how we can lazily load a component. So here, what we'll do is uh, we will say import lazy from React. Okay. And let's get off these things which are not being used. All right, and here where we were importing the user component, so we can say that let's move this here. Const user is equal to lazy, and then we just part the import syntax, and similarly we do that for the to do as well as the home component, right? And I'll just get rid of this and this to do from here and this home as well. Okay, and let's go back to our website. Let's do a reload. Let's open the developer tools and go to the network tab. Let me do a refresh and we'll just what you notice over here is that now when we click on this user page, right? Okay, 1 second. It's giving us some error. So another thing is, since we're using this lazy loading of our components, right? It will go over the network. Let me just open the network tab again. Let's do a refresh. Let's go to the default route. Okay. And let's go to the network tab. Let me clear this. And let's click on user now. So if you take a look over here, it's trying to fetch this user. Now it is actually trying to fetch this user components code, and it's trying to download it and trying to load that uh, page, right? And show it over here. Now this action, this is, this will take some time, right? To download the file from the server and then fetch the code and, display that component's logic over here. So this is an asynchronous operation, right? So whenever we are making use of lazy loading a component, we need to basically wrap that particular component inside a suspense block. Okay. So we'll come back to our app component and we will wrap all of our routes within the suspense block. Okay. So here we will say suspense, which is coming from React. And this accepts a fallback property. So you can uh, add a component or some JSX over here. So this will get displayed while, this component is being downloaded over the network. Okay. And then let's close the suspense code block, right? So suspense component is available within React. Now let's go back to our code. Let's do a reload. Let's come back over here. Let's go to home. Let's go to the to-dos page. Cannot convert object to primitive value. All right, let me just, for a minute, let me just turn off this scanning functionality. Let's do a page reload. Let's just Google. Okay, let me just cross check. What am I doing wrong over here? Importing it. Let's come back to our home component. Let's click on user. We're still getting it. It's showing this loading text because it's trying to download the code from the network, right? Let's just check why this error is happening. Lazy initializer. try and let's try and copy this and just search. We try and move this to our route. Let me just cross check once.
Sorry to interrupt, Gaurav.
Yeah,
Till then, I am launching a session feedback form. So,
yeah.
I would like to request everyone to fill it out. Gaurav, do let me know when we can start Q&A.
Yeah, sure. This is the last thing which I wanted to cover. Just give me a couple of minutes. Okay, let's see if we can. All right. So home is available. I'm just removing that code from here. And let's come back over here, switch to do's provider, user, component, user. Let's just revert back to the original code without the lazy loading and suspense logic. I'll show you that functionality in another way. Right. All right. So the way what we can do is basically let's just come to our home component, and here what we can do is we have let's create a let's make use of this user component in our home component. Okay. And what we can do is whenever we are clicking on this checkbox, that is the time when we will show the user component. Okay. So we'll say if checked, then we show the user component. Otherwise, we show null. Okay. So let's click this over here, click on checked, and now you can see we have the users component over here. And let's try to import lazy right from React. And here we will say const user is equal to lazy import the user component. Okay. And then we'll just wrap this in a suspense. And we'll just display a fallback of loading. Okay. Let me comment this out. Let's do a reload. Okay. Now when I'm clicking on the checkbox, it's trying to load that component. Okay, I'm not sure what's exactly. I need to, dig deeper into this aspect as to why this lazy loading functionality is not working right now. But I'll just show you an example from the React documentation that they have over here, right? So basically, what they have done over here is that we have the suspense and lazy functionality coming from React. And then there is a markdown preview component, which is defined in this file, right? And what it's trying to do over here is that when we are clicking on this show preview checkbox, it will try to convert this markdown into its HTML. Okay. So what has been done is that this markdown preview component has been lazily loaded and it's being imported from this file. And they're adding some delay for the demo. That is, they're making use of this set timeout function so that we can see the loading state. Uh, okay. And so when we click on this show preview, right, that is when you're seeing this loading text. That means it's taking time to download that component and load its code. And then you see this hello world being shown over here, right? So if I add something more over here, say I want to show a list, so you can just say item over here. And now when we click on show preview, it's being shown instantly. Let me do a reset of this. Let's show a item. And then when we click on show preview, so this is how, I mean, you can make use of lazy loading, which will, dynamic, on runtime, it will try to download that file and load its code over here. So that is another way why you can, way by which you can optimize your application. Uh, So the advantage of this is that, it's not loading all of your entire application code at one time. This will allow your application to be shown to the user quickly, right? It will give a good user experience. So this is another way by which you can optimize the performance of your application, right? So I'm not sure why that error is happening. I'll update you guys on LinkedIn with this issue, or probably I'll update it in the comments of this YouTube video, okay, in the chats as to what was the fix. All right, so you can go back and check it out. All right, Preeti, you can go ahead with the questions.
Yeah, actually, we have a lots of questions. So let's start with the first one. Mayank is asking, is React JS enough, or we need to learn Next.js also?
So basically, in React 19, they introduced. Uh, recently they introduced React Server components. So Mm, to make that functionality work, you can set it up on your own, but it's as good as building a React framework. So when that happens, you have to go with frameworks like Next.js or Remix because they provide you that functionality. But in general, I mean, a lot of companies are using Next.js right now if they want to make use of that functionality because it's a framework. But you need to know React as well, right? Um, a lot of companies are still using React. They are not using Next.js. So it's good to know Next.js, but even if you don't know it, you still have a lot of opportunities. But I guess in this, I mean, going by the current scenario as to whatever is going on, it will be an added advantage that you know a framework like Next.js or Remix or TanStack Start, something of that sort.
Okay, thank you. Another question. Do we have shortcut keys after creating context?
Uh, I didn't get that question. What do you mean by shortcut keys?
Okay, so we can move to the next question. If we miss a comma or dot does throw an error, can we move further if we miss comma updating function?
Um, Not very clear with that question. So, I mean, there are certain, rules and contract constructs of the programming language, right? So, if you're not following the syntax, if the syntax demands that there is a dot or a comma, then I mean, when the code is going to execute in your browser, when that JavaScript code is going to run, it will throw an error. So, I mean, if the syntax demands it, then you have to add that comma or full stop.
Uh, Pranav is asking why to use JS and when to use JS and when to use JSX file.
All right. So if you notice over here, right, we are not returning any JSX over here. So JSX is this part, right? This HTML like syntax that you can write within your JavaScript code. Okay. So whenever using this kind of code, or I mean, this kind of, you're using this kind of a syntax where you're making use of JSX, that is where you give your file extension JSX. Otherwise, if you have just plain JavaScript, like we had in this reducer function, you can make use of the .js extension.
Okay, thank you. We have last question. What will happen if I write dispatch count plus one three times in the handle click?
Where is it? In the handle click. So let's try it out. um, where were we using that example of reducer reference? Okay, we're not using it. So basically, I mean, it will try to batch all of those, right? So since React batches all of its updates, okay, and you're saying count plus one three times, it will look at the current value of count, okay, and the current, whatever is the current value of count. So, for example, if it was zero, it will do zero plus one, and then that will go to the reducer and it will basically just give you the result as one. Even for the next dispatch statement, since it's batching all of them, the current count is count plus it's still zero, right? It's not being re-rendered, it's not being updated, so it will give you the final output as one only. Okay, so you can also try it out at your end. Let's just quickly try it out over here. Let's go to the add count functionality on the home page. Right, you have this set count function over here. Let me move this to, okay, wait, you're asking me for the dispatch functionality. Let's go to the user, not user, let's go to the to do one. And where we have the add to dos over here, right? Um, 1 minute. Let's use the original app example only. Let's come over here. Let's just call this three times. And where were we using this counter? Go references. Okay, we're not using it anywhere. For now, let's just add this counter here. Let me comment this out. And we'll just say import counter as reducer counter from counter. Okay. And here we'll just say reducer counter. Let's go back to the home. Let me comment this. You're not able to see this one. Let me go back to the home page. Okay, wait. This is a default import. So, okay, we have broken something. Use reducer is not defined. All right, so we need to import this. Let's save. Let's do a reload. Reduce. Okay, I need to import that as well. Let's go back to our counter. Import reducer from reducer. And it's saying dispatch type keyword function. Okay. Right. So we have this component, and let's just modify this logic a bit in the reducer that we have. Right. So let's just try it with this, and then we'll try passing that value. So I'm clicking on this. So it's directly doing it 3 over here. Right. And now let's try to do it with the, let's make that change, and let's make a change in our reducer as well. Okay. In the action, it's going to just take the value of count. So I'll just comment this out. Return state plus action dot payload. And here in our counter, so payload, we'll just pass 1. Okay. To refresh, let's click on plus. So it's giving you the result as 3. Now in this case, it's giving you as 3 because this has the value of the state over here. But generally when you're doing it with the use state hook, right, it doesn't behave this way. I'll just show you that example as well. So if we do the same thing using the const count set count, right, we make use of the use state hook, and you give the initial value as 0. Okay. And then you do the same thing over here. If you call set count, count plus 1 3 times. The result is going to be 1. So in case of the use state hook, even though you're calling it 3 times, right? It's always going through the current value of count, which is basically 0 initially. So 0 plus 1, you're sending it 1. And here also it's 0 plus 1, you're sending it 1 again. And here also it's 0 plus 1, you're sending it 1 again. But in case of the use reducer hook, since this reducer has has access to your state, right? And it will update that again and again. It is actually updating it to 3. So that is another difference between how these two hooks work. Now if you click on plus, it is actually adding the value by, it's directly updating it to 3. All right, any other questions?
Yeah, we have last question. Shiva is asking latest JS version, which ones are?
Latest JavaScript version basically is the ECMAScript ES 2024, right? That is the latest JavaScript version. So you can see like updates in ES 2024. So it was published in July 2024. And then like these are the new features which have been added to ES 2024. That is, you can make use of the group by function, and the temporal API is also available. And then they have given some examples over here of how you can use those.
Oh, thank you. We are
All right.
done. We are done with all the questions. Before ending the session, is there anything like which you want to express to the people who are going who are watching us right now and who are going to watch us after some time? So, is there anything, any advice you want to give?
So, the advice that I would give is that, if you're working with React, first, just master some, basics of JavaScript, things that you need for React, such as, we use things like object destructuring. We are using concepts such as closures, functions, um, these kind of things. These concepts, you should have a good understanding of these, spread operator and so on. So these are concepts that you will use a lot. How arrays work, the map function. um, so some basic knowledge of these concepts in JavaScript, that will help you a lot in React. And then when you're learning React, um try to build simple applications, then real world uh, you know applications. You'll find lots of those when you Google them, React applications that I can build and so on. So you will find a lot of people who have shared those projects. Try to build all of those on your own. It will give you a lot of confidence. And I know, Chat GPT, and you have GitHub Copilot available in your code editor. But when you're, starting out right now, I would recommend that you try to type the code on your own. You will encounter some different errors, uh, which will help you get a better understanding of how React really works. And then later on, when you're comfortable, then you can use the code completion features or AI features in your apps once you have experience, because it is still going to throw some errors. And how to solve those errors, what to prompt, you still need to have an understanding of React for that, right? And once you have some basic understanding of React, then you can move on to frameworks such as Next.js or Remix and so on. So that is what I would recommend. And the issues that we faced, I'll just uh, provide the fix for that in the comment, uh, in the YouTube chat, right? So I'll link the code in the YouTube chat comment.
Okay, thank you. Thank you so much, Gaurav. We are really grateful for your time and energy and knowledge which you have shared with us today. And to everyone who have joined us today, thank you very, very much for being part of this learning experience. Still, if you have any question, please feel free to reach out to us or directly connect to Mr. Gaurav. And the session recordings are also available on our YouTube channel and LinkedIn account, so you can revisit at any time. We look forward to having you join us again in upcoming session. Until then, take care, keep learning, and have an amazing day. Thank you so much. Once again, thank you very much.
Thanks, everyone. Thanks, Preeti, for conducting this session and helping out. And thanks a lot, everyone, for joining. And I hope you gained some wonderful knowledge in this session, which helps you out in your career.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone. Thank you, Gaurav. Bye bye. Take care.